Buongiorno, benvenuti. And today we're going to make lasagna. Lasagna. You know, I like to share with you every aspect of food that I know at least. But I myself am interested in where certain foods or certain names or certain dishes originated, about the chemistry of food, about the history, about the folklore. It's so wonderful because food is culture and food reflects the needs and the pleasures of the people that enjoy it and eat it. Lasagna, that name. In my readings, at least, I can trace it back to the Romans and lasagnum. The Romans made a pasta, fresh pasta, and cut it in strips, like ribbons, or what we know now, pappardelle. We call them pappardelle. They were called lasagnum, and they would eat them dressed with honey and different spices. So I guess the smoothness and the width of the pasta translated into this wonderful dish. I'm going to begin with making the sugo. Sugo means sauce. And it's basically a nice savory meat sauce. So I have some onions here already wilting. And you want them really consumed. I'm going to add some garlic, and I'm making a little space in the center here where I'm going to put the garlic, because if I throw the garlic right into the onion has already a lot of moisture, and the garlic will really not cook or brown, and I do want it to actually get golden. While this is cooking, we'll prepare the meat. Now, traditionally, el sugo was made basically with all pork meat. Here I have some beef and some pork. I've chopped some of it. And sometimes, you know, when you buy chopped meat, you wonder what's in the chopped meat. You can do it yourself at home. The best way is to do it in small batches. So this way you have a good sense, a good control of the actual chopping, because you don't want a paste. So you pulsate it. This way you're sure that you have the meat that you like, nice and fresh, and chopped fresh. Let me put the bones in. Of course, what adds a lot of flavor is always bones. So you can get yourself a nice piece of pork shoulder or whatever, or the neck, and take the meat out of it and use the bones for flavoring. I'm going to add the chopped meat. And you want to break down the meat, of course, you know, like a meat sauce, so it gets really granular. You're going to season the meat. Salt. This is caramelizing. What's important when you cook sauces or meat is that you get all that water from the meat out. And that you hear the crackling. You know, I tell you, in cooking, visual, smell, I can tell if I'm away, if something, of course, is burning, or if it's caramelizing by the smell. I can tell by the sound. Do you hear this crackling sound? That means that there's no liquid there, that it is touching the bottom of the pan and it's crackling. So you need to come close to it. You need to pay attention and stir it. Let's put some bay leaves. Oregano, dry oregano, and you crush it so you don't get big pieces. Just crush it even more. This oregano is dry oregano on branches, which is wonderful. Put a little more. I put a little bit of white wine just to deglaze everything, to add some acidity and some flavor. And also wine is very good. It sort of helps to break down the fabric of the meat, tenderize the meat in a sense. But when you add wine, what you want is all the alcohol to evaporate before you put in the next liquid. Here I have peeled tomatoes in a can. They're perfectly fine. I can't stress enough that if you have wonderful ripe plum tomatoes in season, they're the best. But if you don't have that, a good canned tomato, plum tomato, is better than a not good or not in season or not ripe fresh tomato. And I just passed it through a food mill. And of course you pick it up full speed. To this I'm going to add the, this is perfect, tomato paste. And I caramelize a lot of time the tomato paste, but traditionally in Campania around Naples, they put the tomato paste straight in. I'm going to add some pepperoncino, maybe some pepper and pepperoncino I'll add. Some salt to salt the tomatoes that I put in, because as you notice, I salted the onions, I salted the meat, I'm salting the tomato. So it takes a sense of what is the accumulative at the end of all. So you have to be careful. You have to sort of, you know, you say, oh, it's much easier for me to put it all at the end. But if you're putting it all at the end, you're not really getting into the meat, salting the meat, and sometimes, you know, the meat remains unsalted, especially if you're doing big pieces of braised meat or whatever. So you'll get the knack of it. Absolutely. I'm sure that you have a good sense of what you like, and just timing. Now this will be perking away slowly for about an hour and a half. And you'll just add a little bit of hot water periodically. You don't want this a soupy. You don't want to add the water all at once. It's a different result. You say, why? Ultimately at the end it's the same water. It's not. You want to add it a little bit. You want it to be just a little loose, then densen. Just a little loose and densen. So back and forth. And, you know, I tell you all the time, absolutely no oil when you're cooking pasta. And that's an absolute must. But when you're cooking lasagna, I do put a little oil. So when you're cooking flat pasta and you don't want it to stick together, you put a little bit of olive oil in the water. It is salted already. And you put a few at a time and give them a chance to absorb the water, begin to cook and become pliable. Because if you begin to mix now, you will crack them. And in the first 5-10 minutes of cooking, it's important that you get back to it and mix it. Once it begins to have a roll, the water begins to have a roll, then you're more comfortable with it. Now that the pasta is done, I'll drain it. Okay. This batch is cooked. You know, to make a good lasagna, you need substantial amount of pasta. So cook it in batches and have a bowl of iced water and just cool them off right in there. You layer it between layers of damp kitchen towels. Just chill it and set it out, and you're going to be ready to proceed. This way it won't stick. It'll be nice and dry. It'll be humid, wet, cooked, soft, but not wet, dripping wet like this, because you will dilute your whole lasagna. Layers are going to be of ricotta, layers of mozzarella, and layers of the sugo. Drain the ricotta. We don't want the water. We're trying to, you see, there's the pattern here. You know, just all the water's out. You want the intensity of the flavors. One of the best lasagnas, I mean, I had in Italy great lasagnas. We made it at home. I make it in the restaurant. But Fortunato Nicotra, who is a chef, my chef now at Lidia, was born in Sicily. grew up and got his culinary training in Piemonte, so he has sort of the south and the north. Wonderful, very talented young man. Makes a mean lasagna, the best. Okay, so here I whipped, put the ricotta right in there. Simple, nothing else. I won't even put any salt because we'll add Parmigiano Reggiano, and Parmigiano has, you know, it's very savory. It'll be enough to season. The sauce is bubbling away, and in, I think, a few minutes we'll be ready to assemble our lasagna. So we're ready to assemble. The sauce has been resting. Let me just remove. These are the bones that we put in, and they are delicious. Just to nibble, be careful, because as you see, I'm shaking so I can get all of the sauce off of them. I'm looking for the bay leaves. Okay, here's one. Bay leaves really, we use up, in the north we use a lot of bay leaves for our cooking, but you do have to be careful because they do lodge in your throat and can become problematic. So get them out once they have given you their flavor. Just line the bottom with a little bit of sauce, not too much, so the pasta does not stick to it. And I'll leave just about 1.5 inches all around so I can close up the lasagna at the end. So start at this end, and don't worry about overlapping. There'll be enough layers that everything will hold together. Use a little bit corner right in here. See, they come in handy, those little pieces. And this is Parmigiano. A lot of Parmigiano. I'm going to put the pasta. Do you know, we need to close the pasta on the other side now. Let's put it like this so I can flip it over on the other side. Let's put the ricotta, this layer of ricotta, and basically the whole layer. Parmigiano. Again, and Parmigiano gives a lot of flavor, but also absorbs if there's any moisture. We'll layer it. I'm going to put the mozzarella. All the pieces. I'm going to just drizzle a little bit of the sauce. And pasta. Great. Right. Parmigiano. And then they're not all even, that's fine. I want a little bit of opening in the center. Tap it off with Parmigiano. You have a preheated oven at about 350 and for about 40 minutes. You'll uncover it in the last 20 minutes so that the top gets nice and brown. When you put this on, don't put it tight because it bubbles and then it sticks to it. So create like a little dome, and you put it in the oven for 40 minutes. The lasagna has been resting for about an hour, and we're going to cut it into portions. So get yourself a sharp knife, not too big. You want to have control. You know, the shorter the knife, the more control you have on the actual point. And slowly up and down in a soaring motion, cut right across in portions, and we'll go. Now the lasagna, when it comes out of the oven bubbling hot, is delicious, but it's difficult to cut and to portion. So letting it rest, really what happens is that the pasta itself reabsorbs some of those sauces, and it becomes even better. And pick it right out. Okay. It looks delicious, but it smells even better. A little bit of the sauce, and just sort of let it drape. A little bit of, I think basil just will add a little. I think I'd like just a little bit of cheese. And the cheese will melt into the sauce, as you can see. Can you see the definite layers of the ricotta, of the mozzarella, of the sauce? That's the way they serve it in Italy. And it really is wonderful, because as you bite into it, you really get the different textures in your mouth. And of course, this calls for a good glass of wine. This is from Tuscany. So let me taste the wine. Wonderful. A lot of complexity in the wine, a lot of complexity in this lasagna. So let's have a feast, una festa. And as we say at my house, tutti a tavola a mangiare.